Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday, which means it's time for yet another Salty Saturday morning. I am your host, producer Matthew Kadish of the Salty Nerd Podcast, coming at you live from beautiful, sunny, cyber-attacked Las Vegas. We're all very excited to have you here this morning. And joining me, as always, is my fantastic panel of nerds, starting with Matt Vader74. How you doing, buddy?
I'm here. Do I have to be the representation today? Do I have to be the wall?
Yes, you're here. You're queer.
I'm something.
You're the bear.
I'm fat. I'm a straight white male. I think I got it all covered. So let's go.
And unfortunately, Brian from the Popcast, our normal representational shield, is feeling under the weather today. So filling in for him is, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Culture Casino. How you doing, buddy?
I'm fierce, I'm feminist, and I'm in your faith.
Yay.
And you've got some of the best facial hair on the panel.
Oh, man, no.
Giving Odin a run for his money.
I think it's grown like 6 inches since last time I saw you.
Mm-hmm. Odin has tremendous beard hair.
Well, it's not just the beard hair. It's also the hair on the head. Puts you over the top. Over the top.
You're not going to take your shirt off for nothing, right?
And we should put up the poll. Should Culture take his shirt off? I'm sure everyone in chat would want to see that.
No.
No, I'm good. I'm okay.
That was the one time show, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, clip that shit. And coming to us across the pond is author extraordinaire and host of the Luke Deckard show, Luke Deckard himself. How you doing, Luke?
I'm well. Thanks for having me on. I don't have like a quippy line, so hello.
How can you live in the UK and not have an accent? That's what I want to know.
Well, I mean, I'm originally from the States. I'm originally from Indiana, so my Indiana accent has been shaven off a little bit over the 15 years that I've lived here.
Alex was in Scotland for like a week, and he came back talking like a Scot. So
yeah,
just easily influenced, I guess.
Ooh, shots fired.
Yeah.
But everyone get a chance. Go check out Luke Deckard's show on YouTube. I was a guest on there not too long ago, and Nadia and Chris, her husband from the Inside All Day podcast, and our fill-in girl for Tuesday was recently on his show as well. So be sure to check out and subscribe to his channel. And speaking of checking out and subscribing to channels, we have the pineapple pizza master himself, Odin from O&B Reviews, standing in front of his golden shelf of Hollywood. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, it's still a fragile shelf. Doing great though. We just signed up with this new app, Criticless, and loving it so far. I'm just amazed that I just recently discovered it, and so thank y'all for posting that in your Discord, because that's the only reason why I initially found out about it. And it's great. I just went through the verification process, so hopefully I'll be a verified content creator on that platform. And check me out over on Criticless. And it'll be my last Saturday stream for at least a little bit. I don't know exactly how long, just because baby girl will be here next week. So right now everything's scheduled for her to arrive on Friday of next week, so it'll be crazy times here.
How many weeks are you going to be taking off of your maternity leave?
So
you better not say more than 2.
So my maternity leave, I just don't know. It's a new experience for me as a mother.
Mr. Buttigieg, please let us know.
I will.
Yes, it is a tragedy that we are losing the All-Father for a couple of months, probably. But
we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yes, but he is welcome to come on anytime he desires to, because we love Odin on this channel, and we're very proud that we get to let him speak occasionally. So that's always fun.
I do appreciate it. I really do get to appreciate the ability that I get to talk on this show. It's great.
And we're not going to force you to eat pineapple pizza either. So that's always
okay. I got that myself, so that was on me.
All right, guys. So real quick, I want to give a shout out to everyone who is in the chat this morning. We really appreciate you being here. We got Anthony Mark, who's always the first one in the chat. Good to see you, Anthony. We got Storyman Jack, Sean Stackhouse. We got Danny's mom, Penny. We got Gavin Blackburn, Super Sticker Extraordinaire. We got Keely Chow, Autoy Fanboy. Good to see you, Autoy Fanboy. We got Matt Vader Superfan, William Forbes.
Forbes is in the hiss.
Good to see you, Forbes. We got Cocho Dragon, Jeremy Turner, First Space Lord, Marks 47, Quantum Cat 76. Who else do we got in here? We got a lot of people wanting to see Vader's feet, which is
No.
very interesting. Let us know in the poll in the chat if you want.
I'm very upset with you right now. That
We
you
have
made
a
a poll.
Studio Lau is in the chat as well, and Wendy Hunter. Thank you all so much for being here today. We really appreciate you tuning into the chat because we love the interaction with the chat. You guys are
We do.
awesome. And speaking of people who are awesome, let's highlight our top donators for the live stream. So we have Mr. William Forbes sitting pretty at the top of the mountain, known for dropping $500 in one super chat. Pretty amazing. And then, of course, we have our top contributor, Scotty Dub, whose status is quickly being threatened by Mr. Forbes, just so you know. But we love Scotty Dub and Bob Dorsey. Also want to give a shout out to the Astro Nerd Boy as well. And our regular donators, our loyalists, Joker's Voice and Mexican Iron Man. Thank you very much for all your consistent donations. We really appreciate that. And our top gifters, of course, William Forbes is one of our top gifters, but since he's one of our superstars, I wanted to highlight some of the other people such as WG, who's constantly helping us keep our fridge stocked, and Jillian N. Thank you all so much for gifting those membership subs. We really appreciate those. And special shout out to our top contributor, the guy who has given us the most support on the Saturday live stream, Scotty Dub. Miss you, buddy. Hope you're doing well out there, and hope to see you back in the Salty Army sometime soon. He is one of the OG Salty Justice Warriors. So one of our goals this live stream is to get 5 new members, just 5. It's not asking for much, but if you're not a member of the channel here on YouTube and you want to sign up, please feel free. You get access to a lot of really cool content on our members only playlist. Vader, what type of stuff do we have on there? It's pretty interesting.
Stuff that we talk about on there that we don't talk about on YouTube. Stuff that would get us canceled in public. Stuff. It's a little edited, a little less. If you know what I'm saying.
More raw.
Yeah, and we talk about other things than movies and television shows. We I don't know. We whatever's on our minds, you know what I'm saying? So everything from this to that. I don't know. You really caught me off guard with that question, man. I'm sorry.
We cover a lot of controversial topics in the members area and a lot of fun topics that don't fit into our movie and TV show niche. But I want to give a big shout out to Mr. William Forbes, who already gifted us 5 salty membership subs. Thank you, Mr. Forbes. Your generosity is legendary.
Hey, Luke Deckard got a membership. You the
Yay! Yes, now you can see the good stuff, Luke. Now
That's
you can see the
right.
good
All the
stuff.
dirty
All
stuff.
these gifted memberships, I never get any. I'm just
Yeah, right. And we also got Jeremy Turner, who just gifted a Salty Nerd podcast membership. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Really appreciate that. I know the people in the chat appreciate it as well. And guys, if you were given a gifted membership, be sure to go to saltynerdvideo.com. Look for our members only playlist. We've got tons of videos on there that you can go through and enjoy as a member. And if you like what you see, we basically release new member content every Monday. And you can keep your subscription going if you like what you see and help support the show. So it's all very good. And before we get going, I just want to highlight some super chats here. So we got Gavin Blackburn for £1.49. Like how I did that, Vader?
It's pretty good. You were smart. Yeah. You are a smart man that knows how to talk in English money. That's very good.
So we got a super sticker from Gavin Blackburn. Thank you all so much, Gavin Blackburn. And of course, we have a member chat from Michelle C. She became a new YouTube member. Welcome to the club, Michelle.
Yay.
Appreciate it. And our lovely Mexican Iron Man for $9.99. Shout out to Mr. Kadish and his Saturday Avengers. Hail from SoCal, where gas prices are high and the homelessness and pronouns are in plentiful supply. So I was recently in Los Angeles, and let me tell you, those gas prices are ridiculous.
I get angry about our gas prices.
So our gas prices here in Vegas just hit $5 a gallon. In LA, they're flirting with $6 a gallon. And that's for the cheapest. That's for the cheapest. And in LA, you have to drive everywhere, right? Like LA is a driving town.
Nobody walks in LA.
Well, you kind of have to drive everywhere here too.
You do, but I mean, like with LA, there's way more people in LA than there is in Vegas.
I guess. Yeah, it's true.
So,
Stay there. Stay on that side of the mountains. We're tired of you. It's okay.
yes.
Unless
All
you're
right, guys.
specifically invited, I don't want to see you.
So, speaking of being tired, are you guys tired of know-it-all Twitter accounts telling you things that aren't true? Odin certainly is, and Odin decided to school them in a recent Twix spat, I guess you'd want to call it. But we have this very interesting exchange here on Twitter, where Exhibitor Relations Co., which actually a pretty decent kind of like movie, I guess, account that kind of covers like industry news. They basically said 9 weeks, still in 3,000 plus theaters, Barbie, one of the top 12 highest grossing films ever, will continue in 3,012 venues this weekend, having already grossed 621 domestic and 1.4 billion worldwide. And it's got the cute gif of Margot Robbie rocking out to her success. But then Odin had to come in and, well, actually, this account, and he was like, before adjusting for inflation, I mean, it's impressive, but come on, box office. And box office exhibitor relations said, you're adjusted for inflation. Sick burn right there. And
I actually appreciated it. I was like, that's actually good. I like that.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. But then Odin, not happy with leaving it at that, had to double down on the well, actually, and like, hey, just did some calculations. And when you look at the biggest films worldwide every year, just going back to 2001, and compare the estimated ticket sales, every single one beats Barbie comfortably, with one exception, Demon Slayer from 2020. Wasn't that an anime? I don't know.
It was, and it was the COVID year, so no one was selling a lot of tickets.
Yeah. For this year, and heck, for the last couple years, you can say Barbie is impressive, but top 12 of all time, you can sit down now. And then you came up with this list to kind of like, show your receipts. And then Exhibitor Relations had to come in and be like, truth is, you're not wrong. But we'd have to discuss Gone with the Wind all the time. Gives new films a boost to discuss box office without inflation, blah, blah, blah. So they're basically justifying their bad reporting on this one. But Odin, what inspired you to basically bitch slap Exhibitor Relations Co. Twix account?
Well, ultimately, sorry, I pulled my headphones out for a second. So ultimately, like, what kind of motivated me to go about it was I'm so just sick and tired of the narratives that are oftentimes built around movies. It's not just a Barbie thing, though clearly very clearly am not a fan of the film and very critical of it. But anytime these news articles come out and they're like, oh, we have a new #1 film, or oh, this is the highest grossing first Thursday of a second month of the year ever, it's like, wait a minute, let's just, we're just kind of making things up. So when you actually use something like greatest, like the highest of all time, the biggest box of all time, I'm like, okay, if you're gonna do that, you gotta go apples for apples. You've got to go as close as you can to actually, to actually compare, ticket sales and prices. And I know everyone always kind of makes fun of me because I always mention you got to adjust for inflation. And then there's always the comment bros who say, dude, inflation is not the thing to use. You got to use ticket sales. And I'm like, if there was a centralized location that tracked all ticket sales, I would use it. The problem is that, especially in today's world, that doesn't exist. So we have to just go based on estimates. And so guess what? I did both. I created a chart and I was like, all right, here's what the number adjusted for inflation would be, and here's what the adjusted ticket sales. And almost universally, you have a higher overall adjusted for inflation total. You also have a higher ticket price, or rather a higher number of tickets sold too. It's interesting how it's almost one for one in that way, almost as if both are good metrics. But again, I guess I digress there. But ultimately, yeah, it comes down to that, where I'm tired of the narrative being spun about these modern films that, yeah, they sound like they're great on paper. Any film that makes $1 billion, you're like, wow, that's impressive. But as I said in that tweet, if you go back to almost every film, going back, actually, I actually added some more years here, going back to 1988, every single film that was the top film of that year, when you adjust, over $1 billion. So it's like, yeah, $1 billion sounds great to us, but in retrospect, in hindsight, even Rain Man from 1988, when you adjust for inflation, made $1 billion. So again, it's like I'm more about let's try to be honest about these numbers. Let's try to actually compare them into what the value of today's dollar is, because I think that's a fair way of doing it, or doing the route of average ticket sales too. So again, I think that's a very important metric to bring up.
Paints a way different story than all these people going, "Oh my God, Barbie's the greatest movie ever made. It made $1 billion." It's like, slow your roll a little bit, because you need to calm down. Yeah, I get it.
Well, I want to throw this to Luke, because Barbie has, whether you like the movie or you didn't like the movie or whatever, it's kind of become a symbol for feminism in Hollywood, right? Like it's something where it fights the patriarchy, it exaltates women and stuff like that. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but the people who are kind of championing its success are kind of doing it in a virtue signaling way. What's your take on this?
I agree. Yeah, Barbie was a weird one for me, and I just kind of going back to the people who are like praising the $1 billion. I'm getting like Dr. Evil vibes when he's in the future and he's like, $1 million, and they're like, is that it? Okay, here you go. But yeah, no, wait, Barbie was just. I watched it recently and I hated it. It was weird. So okay, I'm a writer. I very much a story guy. Story structure is really important. Theme is really important for me. And when I'm watching this movie, it was so uneven on everything. Me and my wife watched it, and at one point we were like, so this film is trying to be like pro feminism and anti patriarchy, which sure, fine, whatever. But no one is addressing the fact that the Barbies are, in their world, are basically the equivalent of a patriarchy, subjugating the Kens, and they don't ever address that huge issue in the room. So for me, it feels like it's sort of this really like I don't know, cotton candy shield, like people just pulling it up, be like, oh, this movie's so great, it's so inspiring, but it's everyone is just getting caught up, I think, in the gloss of it all, because like it's fun to look at, and it's it looks like toys, and that stuff is fine, but it's like when you try and look for the substance of it, it's so clunky, it's so uneven, it's so muddy that I'm like, this isn't good. Like, I don't see how anyone could. I feel like I was watching the 1993 Mario movie. It's like, this isn't what I would think a Barbie movie would be, and also it's just really dumb and bad.
Well, that's typical Hollywood for you, dumb and bad. Culture, I want to ask you about this, because one of the things that we've been seeing lately, especially this year with The Little Mermaid and all these kind of like fake successes, I guess you'd call them, is that ticket prices are way more expensive than they were in the past. And so when you have situations like, for instance, The Little Mermaid, where they said like, oh, it made hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, it's because, like over, 2020 or like whatever the case may be, it's because the ticket prices are more expensive, and because inflation has gone up and money is worth less, people keep increasing the ticket prices to try to, counter that and stuff like that. So even though these movies are boasting impressive numbers, the fact that the economics are different actually shows that they're making less money than previous movies in previous years have. So what's your take on Hollywood trying to get away with this creative accounting and just basically discounting all the inflationary factors in these box office reports?
I think it's rather telling, and I think it speaks to a lot of what Odin was focusing on in his little spat. And, you've had a 40% increase in ticket prices in, 5 years? A little bit more than that, somewhere in there. That's not the same rate as inflation. And that's why a lot of people are, trying to hammer away on these ticket numbers, which I appreciate that Odin's doing research into as well. Because every time I do it, I'm like, holy cow. But there are way less butts and seats. But it's also kind of a lie, because back when money was worth more and they were making these films, by the time these are making it to market, and consider some of these films were in the can for years. I mean, you look at Flash, you look at things like that, and those films have been sitting forever, and they're just gathering dust, and they're just losing money every single day. So I think it's the wrong thing to focus on when we recognize that the value of money is substantially different. So the amount of money has been cheapened. So as time passes, we're looking at even less and less financial validation created by any of these films' supposed success. I look at when I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, where are we at after marketing? Where are we at after the gross exaggerations that are being placed on these films? Because the reported budget we are now finding is very, 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 very far away from what the actual cost of the film was before.
Shout out Valiant Renegade.
Yeah, VR did a lot of work there, and you're seeing this exposed in a way that it's not been exposed in a long time. I mean, you have to go back to the 80s when Hollywood accounting was exposed for the complete fraud that it was, and now we're seeing it at just an alarming level. But if a film is costing the studio roughly twice as much to make, and yet they're still spending hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing on top of that, they're not making money on these films. I mean, they're films that we thought easily were profitable, and even looking at the Star Wars stuff, we're like, oh no, that's profitable by a mile. No, no. The idea that things are left in the red. I think we're all going to have to start reevaluating how we approach our measure of what makes a film successful. Because I think our metrics that we use need to be retired or reevaluated, and I think we're also going to have to look at, is it worth the cost of producing something that's this expensive? I don't know that it is, especially when I'm seeing, and I think you guys have seen this, but a certain person we know, Mr. Conkle, is launching an independent project that's being crowdfunded that I think is going to rival or maybe reproduce the lightning in a bottle that Star Wars was. I think we'll see that.
We'll get him on the show someday.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah,
anyway, those were my thoughts around that without answering the question at all.
Oh no, you answered the question. Speaking of not answering questions, though, I want to throw this to Matt Vader.
I'm good at that sometimes.
Yeah. So Vader, if this hadn't been a Barbie movie, like if they didn't have the Barbie brand behind it, do you think it would have made 1.4 billion worldwide?
Oh no, not even remotely close. This movie had the legs it had because people out there, like my wife and my mother-in-law and my daughter and my two granddaughters, all went out to see it because it's called Barbie. Because there's millions and millions and millions of girls out there in the world, in the United States, that grow up with a closet full of naked Barbies in their closet with their hair all ratted out. It's just how it is. This movie couldn't it would have made $1 billion if it was all they had to do is put the name Barbie on it. You know what I'm saying? And be somewhat faithful to whatever Barbie is. I don't know what Barbie is. I didn't play with Barbies, but I told you guys all before the movie came out that this movie is going to make $1 billion because it's a Barbie movie. I mean, it's simple. It's really easy to figure out, and whether it has messaging or whatever, it didn't matter. Every woman in my family went and watched that movie, and they all kind of like dial in the same kind of politics and thoughts that I have, and none of them cared. I mean, my wife is still trying to dare me. You can't talk about that movie because you haven't seen it. You don't understand it. It's like, well, and I don't argue with her because I don't want to go watch that movie. I really don't. I'm more interested in, these numbers that we're talking about here, right? The ticket sales and the box office and that kind of stuff. How does the streaming stuff factor into all that? Because, like right now, if Barbie's still in the theater, I can go buy a ticket to watch Barbie at every multiplex here in town right now. But yet I just turned on, I think it was Amazon or something, and it said, you can watch theater movies at home now for whatever. How do those ticket. Are those counted into
No,
this?
so that was just it just recently launched on digital, so you can now
Right.
buy it on digital platforms. So no, those are not taken into account with the actual ticket sales themselves. Sometimes studios will be reporting on how their PVODs are, the premium on demand films are doing. But again, anytime you take things out of the hands of like a public company like an AMC or Regal, it becomes this just giant, not just nonsense. That's why, again, I always love the work that Valiant Renegade does on this stuff, because he always goes into the details of just how little we honestly know about any of these things, and why the fact that they're not willing to release their streaming numbers shows us, okay, there's clearly trying to hide something. Because if they were proud of their numbers, they would say, hey, here's how many people have watched it, here's how many unique viewers we have. But clearly they're not doing that, and that tells us there might be a little bit of a, what's the word that Valiant Renegade used a lot, fugazi stuff going on. Yeah.
Well, I think if studios had their way, they'd never report on any numbers for a movie, because it makes it a lot easier to steal and launder money that way.
That's true.
Okay, guys, speaking of terrible movies that nobody cares about, let's talk about a TV show nobody cares about, which is Ahsoka, episode 5. So we've had 5 episodes to kind of like figure out what this show is going to be about. It's basically season 5 of Rebels in live action. But I was honestly surprised at how many people lost their minds over this episode in particular, simply because of member berries. They brought Hayden Christensen back as Anakin Skywalker, de-aged him well this time as opposed to last time at the end of episode 4. And this episode, when I got to the end of it, I was like, how can anyone honestly like this show anymore? The 2/3 of this episode was spent with Anakin teaching Ahsoka a lesson, his final lesson, right? But it wasn't even a lesson. He gave her a choice. He's like, live or die. That's not a lesson. It's like, it's a binary choice, right? It's like, you either want to live or you're going to die. And they didn't make it clear if she was actually in the world between worlds and interacting with Anakin somehow, if he was like a Force ghost, or some YouTubers are speculating that when Vader died, he became a Mortis god or something like that, and exists in the world between worlds and kind of like, is the puppet master there now. But then like at the end of the episode, she goes into the ocean where she's rescued by Hera and the X-Wing pilots. But at that point, you're like, okay, if this was a dream, if it was just all in her head, she'd have died by now. Like, she was under that water for like a couple days at that point, right?
A few hours probably.
No. But no, like
time works differently. Okay,
Yeah.
so he was chilling under the water for like maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like forever. Excuse me.
Yeah, so like at least a day, right? But even if it was a couple hours, like how long can she hold her breath underwater being unconscious, So a lot of people are asking, is like, was it a dream? Was she actually in the world between worlds? Like how does this all kind of come together? And then she goes inside of the mother space whale and light speeds off into another galaxy, even though she has no idea where she's actually going. And I'm sitting there wondering, like, what power does a general actually have in the Star Wars universe military? Like at this point, like Hera, like she should have been able to just be like, okay, I'm going to take a wing of X-Wings, like a squadron, right? 6 X-Wings or like whatever. I'm going to go back up Ahsoka. And as a general, I can do that because I'm in control of like a certain amount of military. This whole thing about senators micromanaging these like little excursions, like that's what they have generals for. And even if that was the case, it's like, well, you're talking about a potential galaxy threatening incident here, right? So maybe you could spare like just like a couple X-Wings to go check this thing out, So everything that's happened up to this point is just stupid. Like the whole idea that like she's taken on a Padawan who has like no force sensitivity, the idea that lightsabers are no longer deadly. Where the hell is Luke? We know that Ahsoka and Luke have like, met and formed a relationship at this point. Like there's all these questions where it's like Luke would be perfect to have at her side at this point. Also, how did that sphere map get a perfect cut down the middle when Ray Stevenson's lightsaber basically melted it, like from the top down?
I noticed that.
Yeah. Like the only good part about this episode, in my opinion, is when Huang, is that how you pronounce it? I don't even know how to pronounce that stupid robot's name. But Huang is leading Jason off, and Jason's like, "Can you teach me how to use the Force?" He's like, "No." He's like, "Can you teach me how to build a lightsaber?" He's like, "No." Just shutting the kid down. I love that part. That was the only good part of this entire episode. But I want to get everyone else's opinion on this. Matt Vader 74, you've been a fan of the cartoons. You have kind of defended Filoni in the past based off of the cartoon episodes. What's your take on this episode?
I find Filoni harder and harder to defend because I don't feel like the dude really knows his own lore at this point. You know, the whole world between worlds thing is it's supposed to be a physical place that Jedis and Sith or whoever can manipulate their powers and figure out how to get into through whatever means that it is that they get into. But it's not a place where you subconsciously go. It's a physical place where you open a door and you enter it and you go in there and you interact with people and stuff. Like I said, it's been forever since I've seen those episodes, so I'm not exactly sure, but I do know it's not a spiritual or elemental thing that you go into. It's a physical thing. So this thing with Ahsoka getting knocked off the cliff and into the water down below, and and all of a sudden her, I took this as her Force consciousness or her spirit or whatever has you is having like a near-death experience. You know what I'm saying? That's how this is playing. And she goes into her near-death experience and she sees Anakin and he teaches her a lesson. And they relive a couple cool flashbacks from the Clone Wars. That I did like that part of the show. The foggy flashbacks with the Clone Wars stuff was interesting. I thought it was kind of cool. We got to see a young Ahsoka. I'm not sure if they cast that role real well, but I'm not going to sit here and talk trash about that kid actor. It just played off very strange to me. I don't feel like we were really in the world between worlds that we were exposed to back on the Rebels show or wherever it was. And it played off very strange. It played off very strange to me. So, and the whole whales thing, I've never been a fan of the space whales. There'll be space whales here. I don't, whatever. I guess they make for cool special effects, and people can go goo goo gaga over giant multi-thousand ton space creatures flying around in the atmosphere of planets. Doesn't seem how it would work really well. But yeah, man, this show, it's 5 episodes in. There's only 3 episodes left, and it's barely gotten started. And I don't feel like we've got enough time left in this show to tell the story. It's like we're going to get the Thrawn, and it's going to be to be continued. How many seasons of this show are we going to have? It is what it is, I guess. It's slow. It's plotting. It's I'm not liking how Rosario Dawson is portraying Ahsoka. Very slow. She talks like this, and I also don't like the whole thing that they're implying where anybody can be a Jedi Knight. Not everybody can be a Jedi Knight. Not everybody has Force powers. It's supposed to be a very rare thing. 1 in a billion sentient beings, or can tap into that ability to use the Force. It's probably even more than that. I don't know. I just feel like they're getting a lot of things wrong. You know what I'm saying? It's very strange, and and I'm not a Star Wars encyclopedia. I've loved Star Wars my whole life, but this doesn't seem right. It feels like things are wrong, and I feel like Filoni isn't living up to his own lore, and it's kind of frustrating. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, and culture. I think one of the big issues with this show is that if you have no context going into it, right? Like maybe you've watched the other live action Star Wars, but you never watched the animated stuff that Filoni's done, the Clone Wars, Rebels, stuff like that. You're completely lost as to like what the hell is going on in this show. And there's many times where I'm sitting there watching this show, and I'm like, if I hadn't watched one season of Rebels, I'd have no idea what they're talking about. So there's that barrier to entry there. But then there's also weird stuff like Vader said, Filoni doesn't seem to know his own lore. So for instance, you could argue that everything that happened in this episode in the World Between Worlds was Anakin trying to get Ahsoka to save herself by waking up and swimming out of the water and choosing to live. But at that point, it's like, that's not really a lesson. That's not something he needs to teach her. Like if he had just woken her up, she'd have probably swum up to, the top of the ocean. So what was your take on this? And do you think that Filoni has a good grasp on like what the fuck he's doing?
Filoni has no idea what he's doing. Are you kidding me? Look, I got on. You're 100% right. If you have no context, and mind you, I saw the animated bologna sausage like here and there sparsely. I wasn't a dedicated viewer like Matt Vader and others, and so maybe I'm suffering a lack of Filoni lore. But if he's not even following his own lore, I don't care. This show suffers more from being boring than it does almost anything else, because as Matt alluded to, the pacing of it is incredibly slow. But having homework for your viewers is never a good plan. It creates, there's so much disconnect walking into it. Every single thing that you produce, especially if it's a visual entertainment medium like film, or even television, you actually want somebody to be able to walk in and in a matter of moments understand where we are in the story and what is happening and get a feel for these characters. You have none of that happening along this, and we're 5 episodes in, as Matt pointed out, and I don't feel like it's progressing. And the only reason I got pulled into this show was because of the physics takes a holiday in the episode 3. If physics had not taken a holiday, even Star Wars physics, as I understand it, had not taken a holiday for the comedic value, I would not be watching this show. So, cartwheeling Ahsoka and, my lightsaber is a butter knife through your metal, structural wing thing. And no, my arms didn't separate from my body, sending me across space. That was the other thing. So, but what got me back on board is it's very clear anti-feminist messaging, because clearly all of the female leadership in the rebel army, the Alliance army, are incompetent in a way that I just could not have imagined ever. I mean, it's really showing you that ladies cannot lead. And when they do a very poor job. We're going to take evasive maneuvers and still heads directly into this pod of whales, also space whales. Fantastic. And let's see what else. Nobody listens. They're all insubordinate and terrible people. And you can break the rules, but it's okay. It's okay. We even though we made these terrible threats and these politicians are threatening you, it's okay. Everything will be fine. Just go back to doing what you're doing. It's all right. That's leadership. We're good.
Vader, what do you think is better, space whales or space flowers?
Oh no.
We're comparing the franchise's stupidity and space beans. I prefer the window into the Trek alternate universe that has the giant mechanoid octopus getting ready to come through it. That was my favorite thing. Space flowers are dumber. I'm just gonna go with that. but not by much. Can
I posit one more question, which is did everybody get more incompetent and less mobile in their sword fighting skills in the brief period of time that has passed?
Oh, they're in slow motion. They're in slow motion.
And why is there a prerequisite like staring contest between every single sword encounter? What is
dramatic pause? I mean, I noticed that when I was watching this episode and Anakin and Ahsoka were having their little fights in the afterlife, I wanted to take that fight and split screen it and put the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan on Mustafar on the bottom. And just play it at real time so you can see what a real saber fight looks like versus whatever this thing is that they're doing, this choreographed thing that they're doing. Yeah, it's crazy. Slow motion fighting on this thing for sure.
Yeah, so I want to throw this to Luke Deckard. So Luke, I think visually this episode is probably the best that we've seen in terms of like the Star Wars live action, just like the Clone Wars flashbacks with like the heavy fog and hiding the fact that like the special effects aren't fully rendered, but it looked beautiful. And it was kind of interesting to see like the live action version of the cartoon characters like Anakin's hair and young Ahsoka and stuff like that. But it seems to me like so many Star Wars fans were caught up in the member berries that they overlooked the fact that this show is ridiculously dumb. Towards the end of the episode, basically there's a new force power where like you can hear resonant memories that are just kind of hanging around. And so like we have like this long scene of Ahsoka sitting there with her eyes closed as the camera pans around her. And we literally hear the exact scene that we just watched in the previous episode, like not cut up or anything like that. It's like the full scene. And I'm sitting there, I was like, we've already heard this. Like she should just close her eyes and open them and be like, I know what happened. So like there's lots of stuff here pacing wise that audiences have been pointing out that like this show is just a mess. So what's your take on Ahsoka and episode 5 in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when the show first came out, basically I haven't enjoyed any Disney Plus Star Wars show. I don't know. I don't know if I've even finished any of them. No, Mandalorian season 1, I finished that one. The others have been very difficult. And Ahsoka is no exception. I remember cutting out 20 minutes into the first episode, and then just caught myself up so that I could talk about Ahsoka for tonight. Yeah, episode 5, the problem that I have with a lot of Star Wars and Disney Plus shows is they have about 2 episodes worth of plot that they try and stretch over 6 to 8 episodes, and it's so thin you can just push right through it. And I was feeling that way with this. We got to the 20-minute mark, and Ahsoka's come out of her dream, and I'm like, wait a minute, this feels like we should be ending the episode around this point. What is going to happen for the next 20 minutes? And then there's this walking around, talking, looking at the ball, this new force power of being able to maybe this is in the cartoons, maybe this is in a book somewhere, I don't know, but like being able to just hold something and relive the moments. I don't remember that in Star Wars.
Yeah, that's new.
Okay, so I was just like, okay, that's pretty big, I guess, and kind of cheap and stupid. And then suddenly she looks at these whales, and I, as someone who didn't watch these cartoons as a kid, and didn't invest in the books either, I was like, what purpose do these whales have? And then when she does a Spock, talking to the space flying humpback whale moment from Star Trek 4, I'm like, what is going on? I don't know. My friend calls this show a Sloka, and I think that's probably the best thing.
That's good. I like it.
Like I was writing it down. I was like, Anakin and her whole scene with Anakin in the fight. What did we learn from that? What was the point? She woke up under the water where she should have died. Yeah, I don't know. What else happened so stupid? Again, yeah, the whales, are they meant to be something in the books? They're meant to be something in the show? I thought Anakin was kind of lame. Nothing was really exciting in this whole episode, except for that one moment, as you mentioned earlier, Matthew, was the bit where the Doctor Who bot, David Tennant robot, is telling the kid, no, he's not gonna train him, not gonna give him a lightsaber. But it's such a clunky mess, and I'm bored to death with these dumb Star Wars fans just lapping up the member berries. I'm bored. Oh, but there's Anakin on the screen. And like when the stupid kid Jason was like, "Mom, can you hear it?" And she's like, "Hear what?" And he's like, "Lightsabers." I'm like, I mean, that to me is like it's the problem with Star Wars. Stupid people just shutting their eyes, listening to Star Wars sounds.
Let me cut it really quick.
Real quick, the best part of that was when the X-Wing pilot, Huang explains to him, Jason's force sensitive, and the guy's just like, okay.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, if anybody on this show would have any reason to be force sensitive, it's Jason. It's that kid, because he is the son of Kanan and Hera from Rebels, and Kanan was a Jedi, so I can kind of buy that. It just kind of dawned on me that I think the problem a lot of people have with this show is that the two characters that are actually good aren't even human. It's Hu Wang and Chopper. They're the best two characters on this show. They have more emotion. They emote more. They act better than any actual human being on this show. So yeah, that says something. That's kind of fun.
I think Nick's name for the robot, Pootie Tang, is a better choice.
That's good.
So, yeah, Nick from Echo Base. I think I like his better.
Yeah. So Odin, I know that it's because of us and our show that we're forcing you to watch Ahsoka, and that's probably the real reason why you're leaving for a couple weeks. So you can get beyond this show.
Psychological torture and everything. Yeah.
Yes. What is your take on this, and why can't Lucasfilm make a good Star Wars? Because right now we have more bad Star Wars than good Star Wars.
It's because I thought you were leading to something else there. So it's because of Kathleen Kennedy. It's because she is the leader in charge of the entirety of Lucasfilm, and she has no actual creative vision. All that she has is a bunch of, political points that she's wanting to push, like, hey, we want to make this more appealing to women, and so let's put women first, and let's try to make sure to kind of quote unquote make amends for the lack of female representation in Star Wars, even though Leia was huge in this entire franchise since the very beginning. And so because of that, she has had a very big problem in delegating. She has a very big problem also with getting along with actual creative people. That's the reason why almost for every project that she has, been in charge of, there has been some disagreement, and there has been some behind the scenes chaos, with one of the most extreme examples being Solo Star Wars Story, where the two directors did not get along with her at all. And so over 75% of the way through filming, they got canned, and they had to refilm all of it, the vast majority of it again with someone completely different. So all of it really stems from that. And with this show especially, it is probably the most boring show that I've ever seen, especially in Star Wars. Like, it might be the most boring show I've ever seen, period, but it's definitely the most boring show in Star Wars. Like, even like with Obi-Wan I think was the worst show. I think that Obi-Wan just like on paper was just much worse, but at least there were some moments where I'm like, wow, that is so stupid. At least I find that entertaining because of the stupidity of what I'm seeing. Whereas with Ahsoka, I just don't care. I'm just sitting there saying, oh, okay, Rosario Dawson, who is, and I think we mentioned this last week, who's known for being a much more, rambunctious personality, is being the most boring, stoic character on the entire show. And even when she's seeing Anakin again, you see that she has a slight change, but in general, it's still pretty much emotionless. And so it's like, this would have been a great moment, like, especially when you can get someone back, right? Like the character of Anakin Skywalker. Like, I almost, if they were going to take the whole world between worlds seriously, don't have this whole, oh, I'm giving you your last lesson and it's very ethereal and it's just very, kind of heady. Instead, you know what I would have probably liked, and again, I know this is kind of contradictory, it seems, because of how I said the show is so boring, but if you actually had a good writer on it, what would have been really cool is if they're talking in the world between worlds and he's explaining certain things to her, of like, hey, here's how things are working, or hey, here's the problems that are going to come your way, or hey, here's how you're going to be able to handle that. Because you know what, I think a lot of people were just more so excited about seeing Hayden Christensen's Anakin again in a much more established way than in the kind of throwaway way that they did it with Obi-Wan. And so if you had done that again, that would have still had that member berry component, but at least you could have had a little bit more substance to what it was, versus, is it a dream? Is it the world between worlds? All these other ultimate questions. But one thing that's also kind of unique, I think the last thing I'll say about the show is this is the first time in a show where I honestly cannot remember finishing an episode, because I know I watched this episode, but then as soon as people, and it was mentioned on Friday Night Tights too, I was like, wait, when did they get inside a space whale? I don't know. I must have fallen asleep again, because again, I think for every episode of this show, I have fallen asleep at least one time because of how boring it actually is. But I don't even remember there ever being a space whale, like at least getting inside of a space whale for this episode. So again, that kind of just shows you, I think, just how bad the show actually is as far as just being completely boring.
You know how bad the show is there's a scene in this episode where Hera is talking to Mon Mothma, and Mon Mothma is like, do you have any proof? And Hera's like, no. And I'm like, wait a minute. You literally had 2 X-Wings destroyed by the vessel that was carrying, Morgana and all the bad guys to Thrawn. You have eyewitness testimony from Ahsoka. You have tons of proof. What do you mean you don't have any proof to present to the count? I
didn't even know Mon Mothma was in this episode. Again, just must have slept through it.
Hey, look, I think that the problem was that Hera didn't have the X-Wings turn on their sentry modes on their X-Wings, so their Tesla cameras didn't catch what happened to them, so they don't have any footage.
But at the same time, like you have a general who was a big part of the rebellion that overthrew the Empire, saying to you, hey, this is happening, this is a threat, and you're just going to ignore it? Doesn't make any sense to me at all. But what does make sense to me are super chats. So real quick.
Money.
Yeah. Want to give a big shout out to Randall Orser for becoming a YouTube member.
Welcome.
Thank you, Randall. Yes. And we've got Salty Superstar, Bob Dorsey for $20. Thank you so much, Bob. Which manly name would you prefer? Staff Sergeant Max Fightmaster or Lance Corporal Remington Thunderknife? I'm going to go with Remington Thunderknife. I like that one.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes.
That's really good. That's a good name. And it needs to be played by I'm having a terrible time with names today. Never mind.
It's okay. It happens when you get older.
Man, I'm terrible.
Brie Larson?
No.
He'd be played by Brie Larson.
No.
Oh, no. Culture Luke, which one do you think is more manly?
That's tough. I think I like Thunderknife. I like Remington Thunderknife. That's cool.
I think I'll make it a clean sweep. I feel like, Fight Master, I'm kind of like, I look like a fire plug, and I'm probably trying to put out fires in my spare time. I'm not excited about that. But Lance Corporal Remington Thunderknife means that, well, you don't know what kind of weaponry I'm bringing, baby. Yeah.
Well, what's funny is I feel like Fight Master doesn't sound like a legit last name, but like Thunderknife could be like a legit like Skywalker or something like that. Like, hello, Mr. Thunderknife. How you doing today?
And was it Carl Urban you were trying to think about?
No.
Oh, Carl Urban would be a great Remington Thunderknife, though.
No, he just needs to go make a new Dread movie and get it done.
Was it Batista? Everyone in chat, try to guess who Vader was thinking of for Lance Corporal Remington Thunderknife.
Great.
Carl Weathers?
Carl Weathers. He'd be good.
He'd be good.
Michael Cera.
80s Carl Weathers.
Michael Cera.
What?
Pierce Brosnan?
No, I was thinking like, honestly, I was thinking like Jack Black, but from that one goofy movie that he made where they were like soldiers with Stiller.
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder type of role. Yeah,
Tom Cruise.
So yeah.
So that whole time you're trying to think of Jack Black?
Yeah, I was. It was. I just picture his face just kind of showed up in my head.
That's such a letdown. I mean,
I know.
I'm like Dwayne Johnson.
No.
John Cena.
I know. We have Jason Momoa. We have Stallone. We have
Jack
Bob
Black.
Hope, Danny DeVito, Idris Elba. None of those were who Matt Vader was thinking of.
No.
Yeah, it's not. And the last name wasn't Thunder Hose, guys. It's going to be somebody. Come on.
And super fan William Forbes for $100. Thank you so much, Mr. Forbes. Matt Vader is the only Vader I want to see weekly. I didn't hate the last episode of Ahsoka, but it wasn't good TV or good Star Wars.
No.
If you're a fanboy of animation, and I am, it was just Memberberry's Star Wars. Still not actually good by any means. I did like how
100%.
When Anakin's walking into the fog and the lightning flashes and you see like hints of Vader.
Yeah.
I thought that visually that was well done, but I feel like the message they were trying to convey didn't make any sense. Because it's like, Anakin's like, I'm training you to be a soldier. I'm training you to survive, which is the correct thing. But then they're saying like, well, all that's evil because, you're learning from Darth Vader, essentially. Like this is Anakin's route to the dark side. I also think Gary made a very interesting point on the Critical Drinkers podcast, where basically we have Vader's story arc. We know where it goes. It's like everything else just convolutes it and dilutes how powerful that redemption arc was.
Yep.
So I don't like it when they bring Anakin or Vader back in any kind of capacity. I think they pulled it off in the original trilogy, and they should have left it with that. But William Forbes for another $100. Matt Vader is right. The show is just to grab people to lead into the Filoni-directed movie. But it's just so slow and boring. She didn't die in the water because she's got magical Jedi plot armor. Don't know why I was excited for this after the Kenobi 1-star crap fest.
Yep.
Yes, Kenobi was awful. Just simply awful. And it's a travesty to what, kind of like was set up before that. But this show, I'm with Odin on this one. Like it's pretty boring. I liked Andor. Like I liked the pace of Andor. So like this is coming from a guy who was like, oh, the pacing of Andor worked for me, and even like when I'm watching this, I'm just like, the slowness coupled with the stupidness is what's killing it, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, and the slowness of the battles, as kind of Vader's been talking about, like it made no sense when you see Hayden Christensen, who's clearly still is athletic and can do a lot of these same moves that even he could do when he was younger. And then you still get Rosario Dawson, who is moving at a very slower pace. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to believe that that this would be an equal battle. Sure.
I got this image in my mind of him fighting Ahsoka, and he's like sitting there drinking a cup of coffee, reading a paper while he's over here.
He's doing his whole like spinning behind the back move,
Yeah.
Well, what's crazy is like we live in a world where in post you could speed this up just a little bit to make it look even faster, right? Like they have the technology, so I don't know why. But JT Gun Late Night with Cap, member for 7 months. Thank you, JT. Hello, nerds and panel. Love the over the top review. Who would win in arm wrestling on the Saturday panel? I'm gonna have to go with Odin.
Yeah,
I think Odin would kick all of our asses.
When I was in 5th grade, I was an arm wrestling champion. So yes, it was 5th grade, but I think I still hold up.
Not even his shelves can defeat him. So.
Well, I don't know about that.
I think it's all the baby curls, and he's going to be doing double baby curls soon.
Seriously. There are some times when I'm carrying my son around, and I'm just like, I don't know how I can still do this, because it's like I haven't done anything athletic in so many years, and I'm like, how in the world am I still able to just, as you're kicking and screaming, like lift you above my head? I have no idea.
I don't know. 5 years ago, when I was lifting, I would say me, but I'll bow down to Odin right now with all the aches and pains I got going on. So.
Oh man.
Yeah, but be sure to check out our over the top review on our YouTube channel. We had a lot of fun talking about that movie. It's one of Jude's favorite 80s films.
It's fun.
It was a good review. So be sure to check that out if you haven't seen it already. And Keely Chow, member chat. It's a good thing I walked away from Star Wars after The Rise of Skywalker. Honestly, I should have walked away after Return of the Jedi. Like,
yes.
Yeah, but we wouldn't have nothing.
Everything after Return of the Jedi has just been shitty. Yeah.
No, the prequels are great. What are you talking about?
We watch things so you guys don't have to, right?
This is true.
Is that how it works?
This is true. All right, Storyman Jack for $5. Everything is swiped from the EU. Jason, Thrawn, Kanan was stolen from Kyle Katarn. They just screw it all up. This is true. Like this whole Ahsoka show is basically the Timothy Zahn books, but without Luke, right? Like they just replaced Luke with Ahsoka. Yeah. Are we all agreed on that?
It's been a while since I read them, but I think it's what they're going for.
There's a lot of stuff missing, but yeah, the clear inspiration of trying to bring Thrawn back is very much rooted in that idea.
And is it just me, or does every time you guys see the word Jason spelled with a C, does it drive you crazy?
Yes.
It drives me out of my mind. Why?
Space Jason.
Jeez.
But it also bothers me because in the books, which I read a ton of, Jason Solo spelled the same way, right?
Yeah, I know. That's where he got
it. Like that was a major character in the EU books, and now
I didn't like it then either.
It's a completely different character with the same name. I'm just like, all right. Wendy Hunter for $9.99. I usually have to watch on rewatch on my TV, but wanted to let you all know I appreciate all your hard work and the time you take and all your opinions on shows on what to watch, or rather not watch. Yes, Wendy, we watch it so you don't have to, but we appreciate you taking the time to check out our live streams. It's really, really nice of you.
Don't watch Invasion, people. Just do not watch Invasion. We will take that bullet for you. Don't waste your time.
Worst show
Rebel
on Apple
Moon.
TV.
Don't watch Rebel Moon either. Believe me, 2 or 3 of us will suffer that for you.
I'm looking forward to that one.
It's going to be 6.5 to 10 hours of slow motion that you just.
You know what? I hope it's awesome. I hope Rebel Moon.
It's Snyder.
I don't care.
Vader,
I don't care.
Vader, no matter what it is, it's going to be slow.
Give us a new story, something cool, some space fights, some aliens, some ships.
Snyder.
I don't care.
I don't care. Everything, bro. A chick.
Whatever.
Everything. All right.
Good. If she's hot, knows how to use a gun, and is easy on the eyes, I'm in. I don't know why you guys want to watch buff dudes all the time. Quit being fucking gay.
What's wrong?
I like my chicks.
I love
being gay.
Dudes.
Well, I'm sure you'll like the non-binary main character that's in Rebel Moon.
I
liked Rebel Moon the first time I saw it when it was called Battle Beyond the Stars. But
it's not going to have a spaceship that looks like a giant pair of boobs. Okay,
you don't know that.
Yeah,
you don't know
right.
That.
You haven't seen it, Vader. You can't say that. This is Zack Snyder we're talking about.
I bet it don't.
I bet it's still Zack Snyder. It's gonna suck.
Yep.
All right.
Listen, Zack Snyder, man. I like 300.
Was that accidentally good, or because we hadn't seen that much slow motion before in a film?
I don't know. I watch it at least a couple times a year.
Or was it all those
because of the source material.
Wait a minute. Was it all those buff dudes?
Oh,
they're pretty buff. I feel a little extra gay when I watch 300. I'm not gonna lie. I do. I go, man. I wish I was cut like that. I'm a little jealous. For sure.
Man, I feel that way about the volleyball scene in Top Gun, but that's just
that's another one. That's another scene where it's okay to be a little gay.
We should do a self-aware episode about scenes that make you feel a little gay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Exactly. All right, Whiskey Jack for £5. What is sad with all this is the damage that has been done to the universe. Where do you go when a cruiser is pulled out of the air? Dragon Ball? So I believe that when Darth Vader and Obi-Wan just stopped that spaceship from flying and just pulled it back down. Yeah, they did that in the Force Unleashed too, the video game.
Disney Star Wars is really good at just making nonsense up and saying you can do it with the Force just to move the little plot along. It's not good.
It's they're literally taking the last decent piece of canon and adapting it for their crappy purposes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is.
Yeah,
that's exactly what this is. And finally, we have Setlick Gaming for $20. Live long and prosper, gentlemen. Coffee with culture. Thumbs up.
Yeah,
totally agreed on that one. Totally agreed. Okay, guys. So we talked about Ahsoka, but now let's talk about a huge podcasting scandal that is rocking the podcast universe. Sorry if this seems like a little inside baseball, but I do produce a podcast and I work in the podcasting YouTube industry. And so I feel like this type of thing is kind of relevant to what we're doing. I know most people out there probably don't care about this stuff, but I wanted to talk about it with you guys anyway, because this is kind of big, right? So Theo Von, comedian Theo Von, came out recently on his podcast and talked about how he was scammed out of a high 6-figure ad read deal that he's owed by his podcasting network Kast Media. And it turns out he's not the only one. The reports are right now that there's up to $4 million in play that are owed to some top podcasters from Kast Media. And a lot of podcasters have started calling out Kast Media CEO Colin Thompson, especially Theo Von, who basically just kind of came out and called the guy out by name, showed his picture, all that stuff. And what was interesting to me, like when I first saw this, is that I had actually met Colin Thompson this year at Podcast Movement here in Vegas, the big podcasting industry trade show. And he was on a panel talking about video podcasting on YouTube. And he gave a big presentation. He talked about how Kast Media was kind of like the spearhead of video podcasting on YouTube. Like Kast Media has a number of studios in LA where they produce video podcasts, and they were kind of like the first ones to really popularize that format. After Joe Rogan, of course, like kind of did his own thing. And what they had done is got a bunch of like big name podcasters to kind of come on board. And after Theo Von dropped this bombshell about how his podcast got defrauded, CoffeeZilla, who's like YouTube's best investigative reporter, like anywhere, like the guy's amazing at just exposing scams and stuff like that. He decided to basically look into this thing, and he interviewed Colin Thompson and Colin Thompson's business partners and the other podcasters who kind of got defrauded on this stuff, and made a really excellent video just kind of like outlining all the shenanigans that are going on over this thing. And I find it very, very fascinating because as a podcast, the Salty Nerd Podcast, we flirted with joining podcasting networks in the past. And the big thing about these podcast networks is they're kind of like YouTube MCMs, multi-channel, like I forget what the acronym is. But essentially, when you join a podcasting network, what they do is they negotiate with advertisers. The advertisers pay them money, and then the network distributes that money amongst the people in their network to do ad reads, right? So you basically get, they're like an ad broker type thing. But in addition to that, they also do a lot of cross promotion of the shows in the podcasting network. And in order to get accepted into these networks, you need to be getting tons and tons of downloads and listens for your podcast, right? Or in the case of YouTube, views. So there are a ton of like kind of well-known comedians and stuff like that in Kast Network. And what Theo Von explains is that basically Kast Network couldn't pay these podcasters because what the CEO was doing was he was taking the money that was owed to these big podcasters and using it to attract new podcasters, right? Using guaranteed minimums. So basically, like if they wanted to attract like a hot new podcast, they say, okay, we'll guarantee you $250,000 this year. And then the new podcast would sign on. But it was a Ponzi scheme, essentially, right? It was taking new money and giving it to the new people as opposed to the old people. So it was kind of like a pyramid scheme type thing in terms of bringing more podcasters on. And the question then became like, well, why was he doing this? And Colin Thompson kind of explains, we saw a big dip in our revenue. Like there was just, advertisers were kind of pulling back because of Bidenomics and inflation and all that stupid stuff. So they weren't making as much money. And so therefore, they couldn't afford to pay a lot of these minimums that they had guaranteed to some of their top podcasters. Now, at the same time, Colin Thompson is basically trying to have Kast be sold to another podcasting network called Podcast One, which is a huge podcasting network owned by the brother of the guy who produced the HBO show Entourage. And they've got like Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla and a bunch of big name podcasters in Podcast One. And they're getting ready to do a public stock offering, right? They're getting ready to go public as a company. And so the idea was that Podcast One would step in and offer to pay all these podcasters what Kast Media was owed if they agreed to not only sign on to their new podcasting network, but also to sign on to their new podcasting network and agree to a new deal, right? So they're not only being absorbed by Podcast One, but they're renegotiating like the new guaranteed minimums and stuff like that. And what Theo Von said was, he was like, it sounded kind of scummy because what they were doing was basically they were trying to get all these major podcasts for less than they were worth to attach themselves to this Podcast One network before they went public in order to pump up their stock price artificially by showing that they have all these new podcasting assets in the company. And since the scandal has broken, the Podcast One stock has actually been going down quite a bit. And so it's actually been hurting their public offering. And one of the reasons for this is because Colin Thompson, the guy behind the scandal, was actually going to be part of the new Podcast One network company, right? Like they weren't firing the guy who defrauded all these guys. They were actually rewarding him for it. And so as this kind of scandal gets a little bit more traction, more and more podcasters are kind of coming out and calling Colin Thompson out on this. And it was kind of funny because I had actually met and spoken with Colin Thompson at Podcast Movement here in Vegas in March. And we were actually talking about maybe doing a little business together because we have our studio out here. And it was like, hey, if we have people in Vegas who want to record podcasts, we could use your studio and stuff like that. But nothing ever came of it. And I never got like a real bad vibe from the guy, but he was just kind of like douchey in a non-threatening way.
Like the California way.
California douche. Yeah, exactly. But now, like, I'm coming to find out, like, oh man, like for years he wasn't paying people on time. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul. There's like this whole thing where he like took millions of dollars to buy himself a home in Wyoming, and instead of paying the people that he owes money to. It's a very interesting kind of like inside baseball drama. So I just wanted to not only talk about it, to highlight what's going on in the podcasting space, but how it might also affect people on YouTube, because a lot of these big time podcasters are also, they have their video podcasts here on YouTube. So Odin, I wanted to start with you. What's your overall take on this scandal?
I mean, it just kind of reminds me why I've always had the mindset of staying away from these giant groups, because almost anytime I hear about these groups, whether it be in this case podcasting, but also like YouTube as well, I always hear about scandals. And it makes sense because, when you have power corrupts, right? When you have absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that's ultimately what we're seeing with a lot of this. And so, though I can understand why, especially from the side of any of these smaller podcasts and these smaller companies that would be interested in, getting some investment and getting some support at the same time, I think it does have to make us all kind of wary. I mean, I'm used to getting these emails from much more like sketchy places where it's like, hey, check out this new app, or check out this, we can send you this new chair, we can send you this thing. And I'm always like, no, thank you. I just, unless it's a company that I know pretty well, like that I've at least heard of, or I've seen other people within the space use, I tend to stay away from even those things, right? Let alone someone who's like, hey, I'm going to basically own your content and, help you in this specific way, because I've just seen too many examples of people getting screwed over in the end. And it seems that is exactly what's happening here. So yeah, I think it is going to have an impact on podcasting, and ultimately just on any organization or any part of the economy in which we have groups like this that have all this money and have all this power and control, especially when multiple people are involved.
Yeah, Luke, there was an issue here for YouTubers. The equivalent of a podcasting network is an MCN, right? A multi-channel network. And the whole idea behind this is collective bargaining power with YouTube and being able to appeal to big brands who can pay a lot of money to have their ads distributed across multiple channels and multiple verticals and stuff like that. And recently, MCNs have gotten a really bad name because they've screwed over a lot of YouTubers. The most famous example recently was Ethan Klein from the H3H3 podcast, who basically said that they were robbed of I think it was like $400,000 or something like that from this MCN that they had signed up with. And so we're seeing kind of when the economy is good, it's very easy for fraudsters to kind of hide their bad behavior because money's just flowing everywhere. But then when a Democrat gets in office and the economy goes bad, all the house of cards start to fall, right? And this is no exception. And I think that most of these podcasts that kind of lost money, they're not hurting for money because they have other forms of income. A lot of them do touring and stuff like that. But in this case, just the sheer brazenness of having all these big creators and then screwing them over kind of caught me, and it does remind me a lot of the MCN thing. So what's your take on this scandal?
I mean, for me, it's quite interesting. I mean, it reminded me as I was kind of diving in and listening to all the different YouTube people talking about the incident. It reminded me. I don't know if you ever saw the on Netflix. There was a documentary called the Tinder Swindler.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was watching this is basically just what this guy is. He's just swindling all these people, and it seems. I think for me, I would probably not be inclined or keen to want to join a network like that. I understand why that might appeal to some people, but there's a kind of sense of autonomy. It's I'd rather just have my own space, do my own thing, not need to worry about when is this mother effer going to pay me my money or not pay me my money, and work it that way. So I just feel like there's plenty of opportunity to be successful without needing to join some sort of conglomerate that's going to control and take a portion of money. For me, it's just like, I don't know why these people would do it, especially if you're already famous and you could already get connections. I'm like, what, this guy's just promising you a bunch of money and you just like lap it up, and then now here you are, millions of dollars out of pocket.
Well, culture, I think one of the interesting things about this is that you have content creators out there, whether they be podcasters or YouTubers or what have you, and they just want to make content, right? But they want to make money making the content because they want to do it full time. Like they want it to be their jobs because they're passionate about it. They love it. And what these MCNs offer is basically, or podcast networks offer, is that they come in, they say, hey, we'll handle all the monetization. We'll handle all the business stuff. You just do what you do best. You create your content and we'll send you money to do it. And content creators are like, great, that sounds fantastic. That's exactly what I want. And then because they don't pay attention to the business end of things, they end up getting screwed over eventually. So what's your take on this whole thing? And do you think there's any way for unknown content creators to protect themselves? Because like Luke mentioned, a lot of these guys, they were famous before they got into podcasting and YouTube. So they bring a built-in audience with them. So like us normal content creators who are kind of coming from the ground up, we don't really have that luxury.
I think it's funny because a lot of people will ask me when they start going into it, and I'm 100% with you. I think you need to not ignore the business aspect of things. I think you need to learn as much about the business as you possibly can, because this is a business. I mean, it starts out as a hobby for all of us. I know it did, right? Even Odin down there shaking his head. But yeah, it's a hobby, and then all of a sudden it's a business. And so the first thing that you realize when you get close to being that business where there might be money coming in is you go, oh crap, I got to run this like a store. I got to figure out, okay, I'm going to have to form a corporation, which will protect me from taxes, protect me from some liability. I got to form an LLC. So, and then you're like, oh crap, now I got to call my accountant and tell him I'm forming another corporation. He's going to have to monitor a bunch of other stuff. And yes, you need to recognize that this is a job. If you don't recognize it as a job beyond the content that you're creating, you set yourself up for failure, I think. And when you turn all of those responsibilities over to somebody else, it may feel great. And maybe if they have a stellar reputation and there's thousands of people that swear by this and they've been doing it well, they get paid consistently, all of those things, they even manage your taxes for you. Sure, if you can find that. I've never heard of anybody having a good experience, MCM or otherwise. And I don't feel like taking a shortcut is ever profitable. I think you always pay for it somehow. You will always pay for it somehow for whatever it's worth. And I know that wasn't the question you asked, but I never answered the question that you asked. So there you go.
Well, you answered the adjacent question. I know, right? This is the Culture Casino channel. He does his own thing. Matt Vader.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because our goal at the Salty Nerd Podcast, from the minute we started deciding to, like, we all sat down in my kitchen and I gave my proposal to start taking this as a serious business. The goal was always to get you and Alex to be able to quit your jobs and go full time, just doing what we love, hanging out with friends, talking about movies, talking about TV shows, doing live streams. Like that's always been our goal here at the Salty Nerd Podcast, is to liberate you and Alex from, the shitty jobs that you're forced to do to support yourselves and do something that you're passionate about. And I feel like, you're in the office many times when I'm sitting here on phone calls with like people who own major podcasting networks. And I'm like, trying to like pitch us to them and all this other stuff. And so like, you kind of like have like some insight into this that, people who don't follow the industry might not. So like, I wanted to get your take on this. Do you think that it's worth going for, being part of one of these networks? Or do you feel like it's more important for people to kind of pull themselves up by their bootstraps and do this on their own?
I think this is a really hard business to get into. And I think the more friends you have, the bigger your network, the more successful people that you can be in contact with and be friends with and get to know, the better. Now, this guy was a crook. He was just a scam artist. He was a Bernie Madoff of the podcasting world. He's taking people's money and he's buying homes with it and hanging out in Las Vegas and gambling and stuff. You know, the guy needs to be in jail. He doesn't need to be rewarded by getting a position at Podcast One. It just makes me not want to do any work with Podcast One. That's what it does. You know, I want to work with you guys. I want to work with people in our circle of influence. I want to work with guys like, you know, Gary and Jay and Culture and Odin and, you know, Az and Luke and people like that. You know, we have our own network. It's just not a network, but it is. You know what I mean? You got to know people. You got to be able to trust people. And I think what this guy's done has made it harder to trust people. We're not going to just jump into any willy-nilly podcast network that comes and approaches us. You know, I mean, you're the producer, and I know you're going to vet the holy living shit out of anybody that comes and approaches us. And then when you find somebody you like, Alex is probably going to re-vet them, and probably harder than you did. You know what I mean? So, and I'm just going to sit around. I'm going to go, yeah, it sounds good to me, because that's what I do. And, but yeah, it's just, it's an unfortunate situation. And, you know, this guy's just a craphead, and he deserves to, you know, spend 6 months in jail or something. He doesn't deserve to be rewarded with a cool job in the podcasting world. I have a hard time with that.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting because in the podcasting world, it's so hard to build an audience that like you need, in order to get accepted into these networks to start making the big money, because like these networks can deliver $25 CPMs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like in order to do podcasting or YouTube as a full-time job, you need to have this type of income coming in order to support yourselves. But in order to do that, you need to have already done the work to build the audience to make it worthwhile for advertisers to do that. And at that point, it's like, well, why don't you just pitch yourselves to sponsors or something along those lines? So it is a kind of cart before the horse thing. And but I just found this interesting because, you know, so many big podcasters got rocked by this guy to the tune of like over $4 million. You know, like a lot of them are like missing out on 6-figure paydays and stuff like that because of that. But I did find it interesting that there was one kind of comment on Theo Vaughn's video where it's like, you know, complains about losing $4 million while recording in his $10 million studio. Yeah. Our studio was not $10 million, but we spent a good amount of money getting it set up and, you know, trying to put on a professional production and all that stuff. And I always hate it when I see people who are passionate about what they do and artists and content creators who get taken advantage of. And it feels like that's basically what this scandal boils down to is you have a guy who was doing all of his accounting on Google spreadsheets, you know, like not paying on time, basically robbing content creators he owed money to in order to bring on new content creators that he could then take advantage of, and all as a scheme to cash out of his company in a big way and then like move to Wyoming and just like leave it all behind him. We see this type of thing every day, right? And it's getting more and more prevalent as, you know, the house of cards fall because of the bad economy and all this other stuff. But that's why we're so wonderfully grateful to the people on our live stream who support us the way they do, especially William Forbes, who just dropped $50. The prequels are bad if you don't watch it with rose-colored glasses. I still enjoy them for certain characters, lightsaber fights, and music. No Star Wars has objectively touched the original trilogy, but I still enjoy some. Ahsoka the White, Vader. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, they're definitely doing that Ahsoka the White thing. The more that you think about it.
Yeah, and
she just had her Balrog moment with this week's episode.
Yeah, and also like because it was brought up last night about the prequels and like there's prequel defenders out there, and I was of the mindset of they're fun in that they're so bad they're funny kind of way, right? The memes I think honestly are the only thing that for me save it in any way is because I think it's hilarious to watch the scenes where it's like no you will die, like it's just funny, it's great in that capacity. But some last night were trying to argue or say on Friday Night Tights about how they thought that that Anakin, that I don't know why I'm just now blanking on his name because I just mentioned him earlier.
Anakin Skywalker.
No, the actor. Sorry.
Hayden Christensen.
Oh,
Hayden
Hayden
Christensen,
Crumb.
thank you very much. Yeah, Hayden Christensen. So, like, trying to say like he was so good, it's like he's not a good actor. Like,
No,
I think
he's
I think he's a great person.
He
I think
was
he's a great
miscast
person
for that role. He was
but like he's
terrible.
not a good actor. And I was just like, wait, I was like kind of going crazy internally. I was like, how are you saying he's a good actor? He's not. I'm sorry. It's like I love the dude. I think that he was treated terribly. I don't think he deserves to be treated terribly at all. But we could also say at the same time, hey, you're an awesome dude. I think you deserve, love and respect, but you're also really not that good of an actor. I mean, again, we can be honest.
Well, I know it's sacrilege to say this, but George Lucas is not a good director. He's terrible at casting people. He's terrible at directing them. Like the only thing that Lucas really kind of honed in on was the cultural mythos of the hero with 1,000 faces, the hero's journey, and kind of melding science fiction and fantasy in a way that had never been done before, but also being a technical innovator, someone who revolutionized, the industry in a certain way. But he's not a good storyteller. In fact, he's terrible.
I have to push back. As far as his direction, now, you know what? You're missing something that Ahsoka episode 5 could have, well, actually all the Ahsoka episodes could have gained some interest in, is his direction faster, more intense.
More intense, yeah. Well, what's funny is that Filoni is basically directing his actors exactly how George Lucas directed them, right? Jedi have to be dispassionate. They have to be, like emotionless and all this other stuff. He's basically mimicking George Lucas's directing style because he wants to pay homage to the master, whatever that
slower, more nap inspiring.
Yeah, but William Forbes, the prequels are bad. I have always said that. Yeah. I will stand by that. The only
Agreed.
good movies, in my opinion, are A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. That's it. Like Return of the Jedi is okay. It's not terrible. But everything else is just awful. It's stupid. And I hate sand. It gets everywhere. Anyway.
I
hate sand.
About William's message there. The other thing that blows my mind about Disney is I don't understand this obsession with validating the prequels. All of their shows just want to validate these garbage movies that, as Odin's saying, they're only good for their memes.
I think it's because they want to keep George Lucas happy, honestly.
But why? He's out of the picture.
He might be out of the picture, but he does still have influence. Like if he wanted Kathleen Kennedy gone, he just needs to talk to the right people, right? So William Forbes for another $50. So William has donated $350 this live stream.
Yeah, it's crazy.
All because of Matt Vader's feet. No, I'm just joking. All right, fellas, I'm out of here. Got to go to work. Love the channel. Looking forward to the playback later. Have a great weekend, everyone. You all will be successful being exactly who you are. Salty nerds are authentic, and that's what fans love. Well, that's what we really strive to be. And it's always funny. Me and Alex often have fights where I'm like, "We need to do this," and Alex is like, "No, fuck that. I'm not selling out, man. I'm not changing what I do to suit what other people want."
That's why I love Alex, man. So based. It's so based.
And I'm in the middle one. So who am I going to side with today? Yeah, it happens a lot. So
well, but we never lie. Though.
No.
Like we're always like whenever we're recording something, we're very honest with our opinions, even when we're afraid that it might get us in trouble, especially with your opinions, Matt.
John Wick 4.
Yeah, John Wick 4, exactly. Yeah, it was it's been a long road, but we've been pretty true to the mission statement we had when we first started off, which was just a couple friends talking about movies and TV shows, and we want our audience to feel like they're right there with us. So That's all we do. All right, guys. So let's talk a little bit more about Star Wars, as if we haven't beaten this dead horse enough. Let's talk about the LANDO TV show, which is now being reported as being a movie. Can you guys believe it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, totally.
It's Disney Star Wars. I can believe anything these days.
Indeed. So let me just call up this article here from Variety. So Donald Glover was on a podcast recently, and they asked him, because he was reported as recently taking over the writing duties on the LANDO TV show. And they were like, "How's that going?" And he's like, "Well, actually, it's not a TV show anymore. It's going to be a movie." And Lucasfilm confirmed this, where they basically said, "Okay, LANDO, which was originally going to be a limited series, is now going to be a feature film." And this is kind of big news because we haven't had any new Star Wars feature films, but we also haven't had any new Star Wars feature films based on characters from the movie that killed Star Wars feature films, right? Like Solo famously was the first Star Wars box office disappointment. It caused Bob Iger to put the brakes on all new development of Star Wars movies and shift over to the TV shows. And I don't think Lando, even though he's a beloved character, especially the original Billy D. Williams Lando, I don't think Donald Glover's Lando has the kind of fan following that would justify putting hundreds of millions of dollars behind him for a movie. So I wanted to get your guys' take on this. Matt Vader 74, do you think turning Lando into a movie is a good idea?
Number one, no, I do not. As soon as you sent me this article, I go, oh, look, it's another bullshit Variety article where they're just putting words on paper to fill space for whatever website or print piece of garbage that they're putting out. These things it's a useless article. It doesn't say anything. It says he was on a podcast and he thinks he might do this thing with his brother because he was in a Star Wars movie once. And I don't even know if I really want to be in the Star Wars movie because, the fans are kind of shitty and, blah, 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 blah. It's never going to happen. I look at this article and I go, this is bullshit. This is hot air. This is a nothing burger. It's trash. It's just filler. This movie is never going to be made. Like every other thing that comes out of Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm's face, they say stuff, never happens, and that's where I'm at with this. It's not real. So
Luke, do you think it's odd that Lucasfilm, especially on the back of the disappointment that was Indiana Jones 5, decides to take one of their least popular, poorest performing movies and do a spin-off with it?
It's a bold move, Cotton. It's a bold move. When I saw that, I mean, the show alone was weird to me. Mm-hmm. Spinning off and doing a show with Lando, with Donald Glover's Lando, was like, what? He was just a poor pastiche of Billy D in Solo, and like, okay, the film makes a bit more sense to me because I'm thinking. He's probably thinking, I don't want to do a TV show. I just want to get a movie done in a few months and not have to spend a whole amount of time on writing 6, 7, 8, 9 episodes and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, that sort of makes sense. I wonder if that's part of it. They're thinking, if we condense this, we can get it done faster. But it is weird to think they're going to do Lando. Like as you were saying, like who thinks about Lando? Who thinks about Donald Glover's Lando?
Nobody.
Like, you don't see posters, you don't see toys, you don't see anything with him. Like it's a bizarre one. I would have gotten like or understood an Ahsoka film or like anyone from that, like that would have made more sense to me than the show that we're getting. And over Lando, it's bizarre. I don't see it making money though.
Yeah, we still have this movie coming from 25,000 years ago. We have a Rey movie that's probably never going to get made, and we got Filoni's garbage movie. They're just throwing stuff on the fire, seeing what sticks, and seeing what kind of reaction they're getting out of people like us. It's never going to happen. Never going to happen.
Yeah. Odin.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was saying, I saw on Twitter that because there's like the writer's strike going on, someone made an interesting point, and I can't find it, so I'm gonna have to like piece together. But they made an interesting point about the Switch possibly having to do with the studios thinking about royalties and streaming royalties if and when the actors and the writers make a deal. If it's going to be more beneficial to go back to making movies rather than making TV shows for streaming because they might be having to pay writers, actors more for that.
Well, it might also have to do with the fact that the WGA is trying to mandate a certain number of writers in a TV writer's room. Yeah. And so it might be cheaper to write like a feature screenplay than it is to, wait until the strike is resolved and turn it into a TV show by having to pay a bunch of writers that they don't need. But Odin, Vader made a very good point where like they have announced a number of movies on the Star Wars slate. We've got the Rey movie in the pipeline. We've got James Mangold's The First Jedi. We've got Taika Waititi's bizarre Star Wars story out there. And we've got Dave Filoni's Mandoverse movie kind of like coming in. So the question then becomes, it's like, are they doing this strictly because of the fact that Donald Glover is a diverse, actor? He's a great actor. He's a great writer. He's very talented. But it's like the Star Wars. Are they like Star Wars needs a black leading man in a movie to check some boxes?
It's so hard to really read this because it just seems to me to make complete sense within the Kathleen Kennedy era of Lucasfilm, where it's a bunch of just random choices that were made that, likely are in some way politically motivated, but ultimately they all share one thing in common, which is that they are not decisions or choices that actually look ahead in any meaningful way whatsoever. I mean, you just look to the other films, and again, shout out to Valiant Renegade for recently uncovering the actual budgets behind these movies and how much more expensive they actually were in hindsight. And we're talking about, obviously Solo was the first clear example of a box office flop for a Star Wars movie, which again is already kind of, just to rethink about that for a moment, of a Star Wars movie losing money is just insane. But when you go back and you look at those numbers, you realize, the franchise already, you could say, barely broke even, maybe made a little bit of profit on all of the new sequels, together. So it's kind of insane to think about that. And especially when you take into account that that's not even accounting for the $4 billion that was spent to actually buy the franchise. So you're seeing all of these things happen. And so decisions like this, to me, just, whether it's on streaming or whether it's a movie, just doesn't make any actual logical sense. It might make sense within this Kathleen Kennedy era of Lucasfilm, but on paper it just doesn't, because it just means, okay, now they're confirming they're going to spend more and more money that they don't have, or it's very hard for them to justify using, and then they're going to once again create another property that no one is clamoring for, no one was asking for, and they're going to sell it to an audience that has gone down, consistently. And I think it's gone down even more so with all of the lack of films we've had and all of the uptick of streaming content, which has just been garbage. It's just been terrible. So yeah, I just don't see how they walk out of this one, financially solvent. I mean, they're already, struggling with that as it is, but it makes no actual logic. None of us would make this decision, but clearly people at Lucasfilm making these decisions aren't thinking.
Well, Lucasfilm has never been known for thinking. But culture, one of the points that Odin made is kind of relevant here in the sense that Disney is losing lots of money because of their streaming service, right? Disney Plus has been, even though it's got, over 160 million subscribers, it's losing money, right? And a lot of the reason it's losing money is because they have to keep pumping out content in order to justify those subscribers staying subscribed and all this other stuff. And so one of Disney's kind of austerity measures is to pull back on the production of content for Disney Plus exclusives, which means that it might make sense for them to pivot, from Star Wars shows to movie theaters, because with movies, it's a little bit more straightforward, and plus you have the extra revenue source of having the theatrical box office coming in for a film. And as long as they can keep the budgets tight, they might even be able to turn a profit. So what's your take on the switch from TV content to movie content once more?
I think that we're looking at it too deeply. I think probably the analysis of the writing is cheaper to do a film than it is to do a television writing room. That's probably, some of it. But I think at the same time, I think this is something that's likely not to get made. I mean, you can hand somebody a holding deal or a development deal or solicit them for a script. I can't imagine that this gets made, and certainly not as a film. There isn't any money there. I don't believe that Glover has the kind of gravitas to pull something like this together from a character from a failed movie, as you guys pointed out before. The idea of making money with Star Wars is a foreign concept to Disney, and they have bigger fish to fry, as you pointed out. The measures that they are taking to lower the expenses that they have right now are just the beginning of things, because they're starting to hammer their own ARPU when they are trying to catch up with their churn rate on their subscription services. And I think that stepping away from films in the face of doing more television, especially with Star Wars and Marvel, has actually put them more behind the 8 ball, because had they just developed more films along the way and released those, they have content for their own walled garden streaming service. And I think that was, there's not a lot of comeback here. But as far as what they really need to focus on is getting back to basics and producing high quality, inexpensive content. And I think that a lot of their woes would be resolved. But I'm not going to go see this. If it ever comes out, I'm not going to go see it. And there's a lot of things that are announced at Disney Star Wars. I think Vader talked about that earlier. There's a lot of things that are announced for Star Wars that we never see.
It's true.
Yep.
From what I hear, a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes too that we never hear about. But if Disney just got rid of Kathleen Kennedy and fired all of her minions, you'd see probably like instant turnaround, right? But let's stop talking about Star Wars and let's start talking about celebrity gossip, in particular Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner. So we're going to talk about this not from the kind of celebrity gossip perspective, but from a different perspective, right?
Oh, right.
So for those of you who don't know, Game of Thrones actress Sophie Turner, who played Sansa on the show, married pop singer Joe Jonas of the Jonas Brothers about, 4 years ago, something like that. And recently they broke up. They're getting a divorce. They have, I think, 2 kids with each other, something like that. But there's this really interesting article in that bastion of journalistic integrity known as Vox that highlights the fact that audiences and the public in general have gotten wise to the PR spin tricks that celebrities use to try to come out on top in these kind of like celebrity feuds, I guess you'd say. And it's really interesting to kind of read through this article, and they cite like a bunch of other kind of like big name breakups in here, but they start showing us the TikTok community, where there's actually got a lot of traction on TikTok, in the sense that when it was announced that Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas were breaking up, Joe Jonas's team just went full blitz. Like Sophie Turner's a bitch. She's a terrible mother. She just wants to drink and fuck and party and all this other stuff. And Joe Jonas is the good father, right? Like he's the one holding the family down. He was the aggrieved party here. And then all these PR experts on TikTok started saying like, well, if you actually read between the lines on these statements and what they're doing and like all this stuff, Joe Jonas is actually the bad guy here. And they start explaining why. And so just because of this free flow of information and audiences just not trusting people in general, they're saying that PR warfare has changed in the Hollywood era. And basically, what this article says is that anything coming from the mainstream media is not true or authentic, and so people just naturally don't trust it. And in this exact same article, they talk about how misogynists smeared Amber Heard with falsities in order to hurt the victims of domestic and sexual abuse. So basically, Vox just proved their own premise in this article as to why people don't trust PR machines anymore, simply because they lie. And what these TikTok experts are saying is that the people who are willing to sit on the truth and not say anything are usually the ones who are the most authentic and the most genuine, because they know the truth and they don't feel the need to lie about it. And it's the people who are making these big announcements and trying to control the narrative who are afraid, because they're the ones who are lying. And this goes for government, this goes for Hollywood, this goes for celebrities. And so like every time you see someone getting out in front of a story or trying to control a narrative or something like that, chances are, according to this article, the public knows that they are the ones who are lying. And we saw this a lot with the COOF, right? Like all the misinformation turned out to be true, and all like the official narrative turned out to be lies, right? And I just found this very interesting because Vox, which, as I said before, is a bastion of journalistic integrity, they never get anything wrong. They're the ones who are kind of like extolling this idea that like you can't trust anything that the mainstream media says, and yet in their very same article they basically do that weird spin. So I want to get your guys' take on this. Luke, let's start with you. What did you think of the PR machine warfare in this article?
Well, I mean, for one, I was like, could you talk about two more boring people than Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas, or whichever Jonas he is? I don't know.
He's one of the brothers. Doesn't matter.
Exactly.
They're all the same.
Yeah, they're yeah. All I think about is the South Park episode where Mickey Mouse beats the shit out of the Jonas Brothers.
That's right.
To me, it was just like, I think for the longest time, I just don't really engage with this sort of stuff, and I just sort of assume whoever is coming out and saying whatever, it's all just part of their tactics to make one look better than the other, and there's always some article coming out to try and like thwart one side and sting the other, and it just becomes a really kind of stupid, pointless game that just, for me, I just don't even engage with this crap. I think it's a waste of people's time.
Yeah,
that's my hot take.
Well, like the celebrity gossip and the celebrity feuds, I would agree with you. But I think that this goes to a deeper issue here, which is basically traditional PR firms and the mainstream media are still following the old playbook, and audiences and the public by and large are starting to get wise to it.
Yeah.
And they're using social media to fight back on it. Like the backlash against Joe Jonas and his PR spin has been legendary, right? Everyone on TikTok is anti Joe Jonas now.
Here's my problem with this whole thing, and I will admit, I'm very sorry, Matt. I did not see this article in your email for some reason, so I haven't read it. Okay, just full disclosure, I don't know what's going on. However, okay, aside from us trying to like be fill-in host on TMZ right now, which I'm not sure what we're doing, this isn't Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston. So I don't care. These people are not big enough celebrities in my head to warrant some kind of big tabloid PR war. You know what I mean? Maybe they are for this new day and age, but I don't feel like they are. And I just find the whole thing very strange.
So you do care about Brad Pitt, huh?
Well, Jennifer Aniston's still on my list. Okay, she's still on my list. I got a pass for her, so I always kind of hope, So
got a hall pass.
Got a hall pass. No, I got a hall pass. But yeah, I find it very strange. I don't, we've gone from tabloid newspapers at the grocery store to it's just been replaced by Instagram now, right? That's kind of how I feel about the whole thing.
Well, it's one of the interesting things in the article is basically the article says that the tabloid format doesn't work anymore. Like people are wise to like the clickbait, the fake headlines, the fake news, stuff like that, and that's one of the reasons why the audience is doing this backlash against like the PR spin machines. And Odin, we see this from Hollywood all the time, right? We're like the ones who shout the loudest are usually the ones who are in the most wrong. And the idea that people are waking up to this and not buying it anymore, I think is an overall benefit, right? Because like we're going to start seeing some accountability happen, hopefully. But I'd like to see that both in Hollywood and the government. What's your take on this?
I mean, yeah, I sure hope so. It'd be really nice if people were started to be held accountable for their actions, because yeah, this has been happening in Hollywood for such a long time. Right? They've been the news and the stories of truths about them are about to be released. They are made aware of it beforehand, so they play cover. And a lot of times in the past, people have bought into it. What I especially like is the way that you worded it earlier. I don't know if this was your intent exactly, but this is how I kind of took it, or at the very least, one of the conclusions I drew. You said, this is what you're seeing from these old school, was the word, old school PR firms and then these news agencies, because I'm like, yeah, you know what? It's funny because modern day news is essentially PR. Like that's all that it is, right? Is modern news, like Vox, for instance. It's so funny that they're, trying to cover this and they're trying to explain it. And then what do at the very end? Say, and that's exactly what happened with Amber Heard. And it's like, oh, so are you still? It's like, wait, all this stuff is already over. Like the trials have ended and everything. And guess what? Amber Heard was found to be a liar. So wait, you're still playing that game? You're still gonna be, it's either you're clearly trying to reestablish her image, maybe because of the fact that a certain I don't know when this article dropped, but a certain trailer just recently dropped with Amber Heard in it. So hey, is there a connection? I don't know. But it's just interesting how they're either going to try to play cover her because of maybe some behind the scenes payments, or at the very least they're still simping for her. And it's like, why? She's crazy. Like seriously, like just let it go. But yeah, it's just, I'm kind of in that same boat where I don't have that exception as Matt Vader had, though, where it's like, why are we talking about these people? But for me, it's like, I don't care who's on the right because I think they're all probably wrong. I mean, to be an actor, to be someone in Hollywood, or to be a big musician these days means the vast majority of the people in those industries are going to be either despicable people or just untrustworthy people. So
I mean, I like my gossip. Don't get me wrong, but it's just not the same anymore that Joan Rivers has passed away. It's just not as fun, So
yeah.
So culture. One of the things here that I found interesting is like, yeah, Amber Heard, right? Like this article literally did what it was accusing the old school PR stuff of doing, is basically taking a false narrative and promoting it as the truth, and therefore you can't trust anything else that was said in it. But it's not just like Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas. Like this goes back to all these other celebrities. We got Britney Spears, Taylor Swift, Reese Witherspoon, like all these actors out there. But in addition to that, like going forward, it's people are becoming more and more cognizant that they're being lied to by the spin machines out there.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see like how many people are going to come to YouTube or going to go to Facebook or TikTok or something like that to get the real scoop. Like here in Vegas, we had a cyber attack recently and nobody was talking about it. And everyone who tried to post about it on social media got their stuff taken down, but it's still out there and people are still posting about it and the truth is getting out, right? So the question then becomes, how is the old school PR spin machine going to break down? How is it going to hurt all these old institutions once people just don't believe them anymore?
Well, I mean, it's already evolving with Inception PR, right? They're trying to get you have people getting out in front of stories so that the PR can't damage them, and then you have Vox creating these false premises. But the problem is that nobody believes the mainstream. We've been saying that for a while. Even all of us probably here have said it 150,000 times in the last 5 years, but nobody believes the mainstream anymore. And the problem is even the sources that you think you're going to, that they can be very easily compromised, which is, especially the TikTok influencer crowd. They're there for money. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have a lot of people like that. And so finding like authentic and actual factually accurate information is like finding a diamond in the rough. So oftentimes I think it's the people that are suppressed the most or are continually knocked down or taken down. Those are more likely going to be the reliable sources of information, than anything you're going to hear from anybody else. But I think what's happened, and I think you're right in your premise, that we've actually suffered greatly because of how many things have been compromised and have become propaganda and have been propaganda for so long that, even when somebody comes and tells you the truth, you have a difficulty believing it. So many different things between truth and falsehood are conflated now that just because they seem like they could be true, which is a real problem. I don't know if I answered your question, but it would be the first one.
But all of that's just going to get worse coming up in the next year because we're going into an election year, and it's going to be brutal. I mean, I don't even watch the news. I didn't even know about the Las Vegas hacking thing. Until I went to work the other day, and we were 2 days into it. Wow. My boss comes up and it's like, "Hey, did you hear about this?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "Yeah, MGM haven't been able to gamble for 2 days." I'm like, "What? That's insane." But yeah, it's true.
I was covering that. You weren't watching me then, Matt.
I was not. I was slaving away in the office for Matt.
Well, what's even crazy is just within the last few days, and Odin, you can chime in on this if you want. We saw the Biden administration basically send out a paper to all the major news organizations talking about how they need to cover something.
Yeah, that's
right. Like the government's literally saying like, oh, here's how you need to cover this issue that makes our guy look bad.
And then they did.
And then they did.
Can we get a copy of that? I'd like to see that.
Inception. I bet you can get a copy of that.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to get a copy of is Kayan Kareen's $9.99 super chat. Hi, Kareen. The situation is weird. I feel like the media is trying to make both of them big. What I hate is the narrative that she was too young and she was a predator. She was a grown woman when she married him. Stop.
Yes,
she was a grown woman. Even though she played a kid on Game of Thrones, a young teen. It's kind of funny because she's just been like, she released a statement on Instagram. That was all she said about it. She hasn't said anything else. But Joe Jonas has been going out, his PR team. They're like, oh, she was partying all the time. She was drinking. She was hooking up with dudes, like all this like terrible like stuff, which I'm not inclined to believe. I really do think that Joe Jonas's team is trying to smear her in this instance.
He should go put his purity ring back on.
Huh? You're gonna wear it, you little prick. Huh? Great episode of South Park. Yes.
Yep.
See, and yet I'm more inclined to believe that she belongs in a garden shed. That's a different conversation entirely.
Hey man, she's up ruling the North right now, so leave her alone. It's okay.
They're both bad. They're both untrustworthy. Why would he trust either of them? I wouldn't let either of them babysit my child. So you know what? I'm just not going to defend either of them.
All right. And we also have a $10 super chat from No Money G. Good to see No Money. Hail, guys. I'm at a car show and we'll have to catch the replay. But whatever happened, I blame Mr. Kadish for all of it. Yes, buck stops with me. Yes, it is always my fault, indeed. All right, guys. So we had a lot to talk about today, and we talked about it. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all in the chat, and thank you all who gave us super chats. Really appreciate you guys. Odin, do you have any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
Yeah, you can check me out over at OMB Reviews on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, Twitter, and now on Criticless. And I apologize for anyone who follows me over there because apparently that's one thing they have needed to fix is how to do the notifications. Because I'm sorry I blew up your notifications with my quick reviews. I was like, ooh, this is fun. This is addicting. I really like this. But go check it out. It's actually a really fun, cool new app. So check it out. But as far as final thoughts, yeah. So going back to like kind of the first thing with the box office and the ticket sales, I'm gonna talk about it further tonight on the stream. But it's a very fascinating issue. And one of the key responses has been, well, you didn't, take into account the fact that exchange rates change. And so you can't say that you can't just adjust everything for inflation for the US dollar because the value of this would have changed. It's like, they reported in dollars. I'm just going to keep things simple. If you want to go ahead and break it down by country and you can show there's a significant difference between the two, you go right ahead and do it. But until you can, just zip it. But it's always fun coming. Wait, was that?
There's no significant difference.
I better say I can't imagine that's going to be that big of a difference. But anyway, so yeah, seriously, it's always great coming on with these shows, and I'm going to be sad to be out for I don't know how long. I'll have to look back at my YouTube schedule to see when Baby Thor was born, how long it took before I started making videos again. I don't think it was as long as I thought it was going to be, but obviously with new kids, you never know what's going to happen or what's going to be like.
They're made out of rubber. Just throw them in the thing behind you and go. It's
put them on the shelf.
Yeah, then they bounce back right to you. That's kind of the nature of rubber. But it's always great. Yeah, the shelf is just. We'll see if it stands. We'll see if it's standing by the time I get back. So.
Yeah, but we also, for those of you out there wondering what Criticless is, as Odin was talking about, it's basically a movie review app where people can basically, post their reviews. It's kind of like Letterboxd, but it's a free speech letterbox. So like you can post what you want on there, and you're not going to get banned from it and stuff like that. So it's a very cool new app. They're going to be sponsoring us for the month of October, the Saltiner podcast. So we're going to be featuring the app. We're going to have the creator of the app on to read some movie reviews on our Tuesday live streams and all this fun stuff. So it should be really good. And it's got like a cool 80s vaporware vibe to it. And the people who are making it are very passionate about about movies and TV shows, which is another big thing. Is on this app, unlike Letterboxd, you can actually review seasons of TV as well, which is fun.
Really
Luke Deckard, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
You can find me on Twitter. My handle is Luke Writes Crime, and my YouTube show is The Luke Deckard Show, which you can find me there, and on, I suppose, Apple and Spotify, if you're so inclined. Final thoughts. Who cares about Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas? Ahsoka sucks balls, and that's all I got.
Salty.
That's all you got.
Nice. Fit right in.
Okay. Everyone be sure to check out Luke's YouTube channel and sign up. He does a good interview show where he talks to people and gets them to say things like me, for instance. I was on his show not too long ago.
If you don't like it, you can suck these nuts. All right. Sir.
Exactly. The Ahsoka robot, Huge Wang, over there. Culture Casino, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
You can find me at Culture Casino everywhere. YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, Minds, Getter, and X, formerly Twitter. So
Grindr.
Yeah. You keep going. Yeah, probably. I think I'm gonna have an Insta Facebookgram thing at some point. I don't know. Whatever the kids are doing now.
It's the face.
What? Anyway,
it's the face thing. Okay.
Insta Facebookgram, right? And something like that. Anyway, look, the final thoughts are very simple. Go see Equalizer 3.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's fun.
And Matt Vader 74. What do we got going on the Salty Nerd channel this week?
I want to take care of one little thing here really quick before we go. I want to thank Odin for coming in and hanging out with us every week. I know he's got a big life thing coming up with the birth of your child, and I think it's awesome. Take as much time as you need, man. That's a very important thing. I think it's awesome. But no
don't
more.
Don't take too much time.
Don't
expect you to be back.
Yes, Mr. Kadish. Okay.
Don't make any more. Okay, that's enough.
No promises.
Luke, thank you for coming on the show today. It was nice having you. It was a pleasure meeting you.
It's a pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to having you back. It's always nice when we get new people on the show. Culture, thanks for filling in for Brian today. It was awesome having you. I love it when you come on the show. I want to acknowledge really quickly, we had a really good group over on Rumble today. I think we were putting close to 30 people, which I think is our largest Rumble chat ever over there. Salt Dog and Mr. JC Chappie were kind of like keeping me busy a little bit in the chat. So I wanted to just say hi to those guys. Thanks for being over there on Rumble, everybody. If you're not subscribed to our Rumble channel, please go over there and do that. Link should be in below us here. And what do we have going on the Salty Nerd podcast? So we have our Tuesday live streams, just like this one, except that Alex is there and Nadia usually joins us in Jude's seat because Jude does not like to do live streams. Everybody thinks Jude is gone. Jude is not gone. Jude just doesn't do this. She likes to hang out and do the other kind of shows. We have our weekly Invasion episode review. That is always a complete firebomb. It's the only thing that makes me keep drinking over there because I'm trying to cut back. But man, it is hard when we watch that show. It is not a good show. And also this week coming up on Friday, we have a review of this absolute masterpiece of a film called The Glimmer Man coming out. It's something. Steven Seagal, peak Steven Seagal. So that's all.
Ivory Wayans.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you, Matthew, for making us watch that movie.
You're
Love
welcome.
you, man. All right.
It's a part of our Schwartz-Longal Timber month, where we watch Schwarzenegger, Stallone, and Steven Seagal movies all month of September. Real quick, we got a members chat from Danny the Dork Knight, member for 7 months. Congrats to Odin.
Thank you.
Yes. I know Vader hates it when we do this, so I'm just going to do it anyway. We acknowledge Danny the Dork Knight.
I kicked him out of our Discord on accident this week. He got pissed off at me.
By accident, huh?
Yeah, by accident.
Yeah.
I fixed it. It was kind of funny though. He's like, "How come I'm not on the Discord anymore? Am I getting punished?" Yep. Yeah.
No, you were just acknowledging him. That was it.
Yeah, acknowledged. You were acknowledged.
Never trust Vader with technology stuff.
No, it's not good.
He's been doing our Twitter Spaces for like 3 years now, and he still can't figure out how to do it.
Still can't do it.
It's terrible. And we got a super chat from ButterBiscuit92 for $5. Love listening to you guys every Saturday while I deliver the mail. Gives me sanity for a couple hours. LOL. Well wishes to Odin with the newborn. Thank you, ButterBiscuit.
Thank you.
Very kind. We're happy to keep you company while you're working on the
delivering
weekend.
our mail.
Exactly, delivering our mail. All right, so we got to get rid of acknowledging Danny. That's enough acknowledgement for one day.
Yeah, too much
real quick before we go. So we had a poll going in the chat. The poll was, do you want to see Matt Vader's feet? And a whopping 25% do. 25% of the chat want to see Matt Vader's feet.
Well, for $1,000 each, I will send them a photo of my feet.
Wow.
Well, Vader, you were comparing feet to those of my fiance's this past Sunday.
Well, yeah, but she has cute feet.
You were going to go in together on a Foot Finder account, I believe, or an OnlyFans.
I was a couple shots in, I think, at that point. So probably not going to happen.
Wow.
I'm more disturbed that a quarter of the audience wants to see his feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. That's disgusting.
Exactly. What's wrong with you people? Hit the sub button.
I want to give everyone who donated to our show today a big shout out. Gavin Blackburn, Mexican Iron Man, Bob Dorsey, William Forbes, the superstar, Storyman Jack, Wendy Hunter, Whiskey Jack, Setlick Gaming, Kareen, No Money G, and Butter Biscuit. Thank you all so much for your donations. We really do appreciate it. We are trying to get Vader to quit his job and come full-time on the podcast, and you guys get us a little bit closer to that goal every time you donate. So we really, really do appreciate that.
True.
We had a lot to say today, and we talked about it. And I just want to thank our fantastic panel of nerds who came on here and graced us with their presence. Odin, you will be missed, but I'm only giving you 2 weeks. You're not going to Buttigieg me, on this thing.
In the state of Tennessee, I should get 6 weeks of paternity leave.
No, but hopefully next week Brian will be back, and we need to find a replacement for Odin for the interim. So if you guys have any ideas, feel free to let us know.
Someone bald. That's my only condition. It has to be someone else who's bald.
Someone bald with a beard.
With a beard.
So culture, shave your head.
we'll get Tom Connors.
Yeah, he's really bald.
Go. There you go.
Luke, take your hat off. What do you got going on under there? Oh,
Leave him alone. Leave him alone.
It's too much hair.
Leave him alone.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Join us next week, same salty time, same salty channel, for more saltiness on these Salty Saturdays. Until then, stay salty, my friends.